In 2005, Kingdom of Heaven was released, portraying the Crusades, the centuries-long conflict between the Christian and Islamic worlds. Beginning in 1096, Catholic Europeans set out to reclaim the Holy Land and spread Christianity to new territories. You might expect a historical drama to present both sides fairly, but this film doesn't. It depicts Christian crusaders as barbaric and bloodthirsty, while Muslims are shown as enlightened and peaceful. Director Ridley Scott, an atheist, likely influenced this framing, yet it reflects a widespread Western view that has dominated popular culture for decades. Documentaries like the History Channel's *Mankind, The Story of Us* reinforce the idea that the Crusades were a uniquely evil chapter of history, suggesting that Christians attacked a peaceful Islamic world simply because they could, and portraying these events as a cautionary tale about religion and politics. However, this perspective is misleading. The Crusades are often misunderstood, and when examined in context, they were both a morally justified and historically significant undertaking. To understand this, we need to look back roughly 500 years before the First Crusade. By 600 AD, Christianity had spread widely across the Middle East and North Africa regions, now associated with Islam. This expansion followed Emperor Constantine the Great's legalization of Christianity with the Edict of Milan, which established Christianity across both the Western and Eastern Roman empires. Even after the fall of the Western Empire, most invading barbarian tribes converted to Christianity. In the mid-600s, however, a warlord from the Arabian Peninsula rose to power, expanding Islamic rule through conquest. Unlike the European barbarians, these invaders did not adopt Christianity, instead subjugating local populations. At the time, the Middle East was dominated by two major powers, the Byzantine Empire and the Sassanid Empire, both weakened by a devastating 25-year war. This left them vulnerable, resulting in the Byzantine loss of Africa and the Levant, and the complete collapse of the Sassanid Empire. Crucially, the Holy Land fell to Muslim rule, and by 900 AD, Islamic influence had reached southern Italy and even parts of France. While wars of conquest were common throughout history, Islam introduced the concept of jihad, or holy war, inspired by Muhammad's own campaigns, which included taking captives and enslaving populations. Christians under Islamic rule were often second-class citizens, subjected to heavy taxes called jizya, with churches closed or repurposed, and many were enslaved. Over centuries, the Christian population in the Middle East and North Africa dwindled from majority to minority. In addition, Islamic piracy disrupted the Mediterranean, a region previously stabilized by Roman rule, making trade dangerous and causing widespread economic hardship in Europe for nearly 400 years. The so-called Islamic Golden Age, celebrated for its culture and learning, came at the expense of Europe and Christianity, and this context, from 600 to 1000 AD, helps explain why this period is often viewed as a European Dark Age. As it was a time when Europe was effectively cut off from much of the world and constantly under threat. Amid this hostile environment, Christendom finally reached a breaking point. The earliest stirrings of a crusade came in 846, when an Arab expedition from Sicily sailed up the Tiber River and sacked St. Peter's in Rome. A cleric in France called on Christian rulers to unite against the enemies of Christ, and Pope Leo IV promised heavenly rewards to those who died fighting the Muslims. However, it wasn't until around the year 1000 that tensions escalated on multiple fronts. In the West, the Islamic Caliphate of Cordoba and other Muslim powers in Iberia began pushing northward, conquering, burning, and enslaving Christian cities, including Barcelona and Leon. This expansion prompted the Christian kingdoms to launch the Reconquista, a centuries-long effort to reclaim Iberia from Islamic rule. Meanwhile, in the east, the situation was even graver. In the late 900s, the Seljuk Turks, a Central Asian Muslim group, began migrating into Anatolia. By 1064, they had completely conquered Armenia, sacking its capital Ani, a city that never recovered and remains a ruin today. Most Armenians fled southeast, establishing a new kingdom called Cilician Armenia, essentially making their homeland unlivable. The Seljuks then turned their attention to the Byzantine Empire, invading western Anatolia in large numbers. Byzantine counterattacks failed, culminating in a catastrophic defeat at the Battle of Manzikert. Following this, The Turks began mass migration into Anatolia, dramatically altering the region's demographics and forcing yet another part of Christendom under Islamic control. Historian John J. O'Neill emphasizes that within just 35 years, the Turks had seized Christian territories larger than the entire region of France, becoming a direct threat to Europe. Recognizing their inability to resist the Islamic advance alone, Byzantine Emperor Alexius I Comnenus appealed to the Pope and Western Christendom for assistance. This appeal was remarkable because Eastern and Western Christendom had been in schism for nearly 50 years, with the Catholic and Orthodox churches largely at odds. The crisis, however, was dire enough to prompt cooperation. Matters were further aggravated by the persecution of Christian pilgrims in the Holy Land, witnessed firsthand by figures like Peter the Hermit, who would become one of the Crusades' most passionate advocates. Given this geopolitical context, the First Crusade was called, from the perspective of Catholic Europeans at the time, Muslims were not only aggressors who waged war against non-combatants and enslaved women and children, but they had also conquered Iberia and Anatolia and posed a direct threat to France and Italy. By the turn of the first millennium, European elites were wealthier, better educated, and more interconnected than at any time since the Roman Empire. They understood the scale of the threat posed by Islamic expansion and recognized the need to respond. In 1095, the moment arrived. Pope Urban II issued the call for the First Crusade to reclaim the Holy Land and push back Islamic forces. In one of his speeches, he implored, "Your brethren who live in the East are in urgent need of your help, and you must hasten to give them the aid promised. The heathens have killed many, destroyed churches, and devastated the Greek Empire. If you permit them to continue with impunity, the faithful of God will suffer even more. Therefore, I, as Christ's herald, beseech you to spread this message and persuade all people of whatever rank to aid your Christian brethren. Let hatred depart, let quarrels end, let war cease, and all dissensions slumber." Pope Urban's speech emphasized not only the defense of Christendom, but also the resolution of internal conflicts between Christian kingdoms. He envisioned an international brotherhood of Catholics fighting a common external threat rather than each other. The call for a crusade was met with overwhelming enthusiasm, spreading rapidly throughout Europe and setting the stage for a campaign that would shape the continent for centuries. Tens of thousands of devout Christians across Europe answered the call: peasants, ambitious knights, even kings. People from all regions, French, English, Flemish, German, were inspired to take up arms for their faith. The scale of this achievement is often overlooked. It was an unprecedented moment in human history. A multinational network of Europeans from diverse backgrounds came together under a shared religion with common objectives. So many different peoples uniting for a civilization-wide endeavor had never happened before and has rarely been seen since. This is why the Crusades are often misunderstood today. Did every crusade go perfectly? Certainly not. Some, like the Reconquista, were remarkable successes, while others, such as the Fourth Crusade, ended in failure. Yet even the setbacks are understandable in context. Crusaders were traveling halfway across the world to confront enemies on their own territory. The logistics alone were a monumental challenge, and despite these difficulties, Christian forces often prevailed. The First Crusade stands out as a clear success. Crusaders defeated nearly every Muslim army they encountered and captured Jerusalem for the first time in centuries, bringing the Holy Land back under Christian control. It also established Crusader states that remained in the Middle East for about 100 years. Another notable crusade was the Sixth Crusade. Jerusalem had returned to Muslim control, but internal conflict among Muslim factions allowed a peaceful negotiation to return the city to Christian rule without bloodshed, a remarkable diplomatic victory, even if it was temporary. During this period, holding Jerusalem for long was a challenge for anyone. The Crusades secured Western Christendom and provided a buffer for its eastern territories for centuries. It was not until the rise of the Ottoman Empire in the 1300s that Europe faced a renewed Islamic threat, but Crusaders once again mobilized to counter it. Campaigns like the battles of Nicopolis and Varna demonstrated that Christian Europe could still unite against external threats. Later, in the 1600s, the Holy League, a coalition of Christian states, managed to defeat the Ottomans and push them back from Europe. Some argue that the Crusades failed, but the historical record tells a different story. Europe was Christian when the Crusades began, and it remains largely so today. Christianity only began to wane after the Pope lost the authority to organize such campaigns. Looking back, the Crusades were not a shameful episode. They were a defense of Christendom and a means to spread the faith after centuries of challenge and aggression. The Crusades were a defining moment of resilience, unity, and strategic achievement in European history.